Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Solid topic, a little dark. Let's do it. What's the scariest thing you've ever witnessed? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Many years ago, I was driving home for Christmas and I got stuck on a major highway behind a horrific accident. Eventually, they opened up a single lane, and as cars came to pass through the accident scene, they had lined up 5 to 6 deceased people on the shoulder of the highway in the snow. An entire family was wiped out and visible to all who were still moving. Even now, decades later, it still makes me sick to my stomach just thinking about it. This was maybe 2 days before Christmas. My brother's dead body. He shot himself with a shotgun, or so we thought. I found his body. The blood, the brains, a hole. The blood on the wall, the carpet welts. Turns out, my cousin broke in and shot him over a girl. We didn't know for 20 years, but either way, worst thing I ever seen. One time I went to Winn-Dixie grocery store in the morning for some breakfast items and found a guy unconscious in the back of the store's building outside. It was a hot day, and he was in the sun. Many people passed him, but no one stopped. I thought to myself, it's 87 degrees out, it's Florida, and he's passed out in the sun with no shade. I walk over to him to offer him a water. He didn't respond. He was dead. I didn't understand that he was dead, so I continued to try and wake him up, until eventually I called the ambulance, and they tried to bring him back to life, but he overdosed and was dead for 30 minutes already by the time I went to help the dude. Truly traumatic. Worked at a funeral home. After getting my suit on for a service, I went into the chapel room to turn lights on. The wife of the deceased was there already with their newborn baby. She had her baby on his chest and telling her to say goodbye to Daddy while she cried. He was electrocuted on the job. I don't do the description justice, but for all the sad things I saw there, that got to me the most. First thing that pops to mind is when I was in a traffic some years ago. A mother mallard walked into the road with her ducklings trailing behind. Everyone naturally stopped to let them cross, all except this one thug life living a-hole. Just kept driving and crushed one or two of the babies. I couldn't watch, but I saw the shocked and disgusted looks on the other drivers' faces. I don't know what kind of person grows up to be like that, but they're horrible. I have nothing nice to say, so I won't say anything else. Went to a party with my girlfriend at the time about 5 years ago to a friend's house. His cat just had a litter of kittens, and he was offering them for free to anyone who came in and wanted them. The party wasn't for the kittens, just so happened they were born like 2 weeks before the party. One of the guys who came asked if he could keep one of the kittens. The guy with the kittens agreed. A few hours later, when everyone was drinking and having a good time, the guy with the kitten and 2 other guys go outside with it and say, "Hey, watch this, guys." They ran down the stairs. We were on the 3rd floor with a balcony. One of them got in a car and started to drive around the apartment complex to come back. As he rounded the last corner to come back, he floored it. And as he did this, his friend holding the kitten threw it underneath the car, killing it instantly. They all came back upstairs laughing hysterically. My girlfriend, after seeing that happen, immediately broke down crying. Several folks did. And after she composed herself, we left immediately. I used to mow my grandma's lawn every week for years. One year, I guess I went over a rabbit hole, and it startled some of the bunnies who ran out, and I had hit one with the blade. The sound of its tiny shrieks still stick with me, and the picture of half of its face gone is burned in my brain. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I had to put it out of its misery as fast as I could, so I picked it up with a shovel and put it in my bag of cut grass and suffocated it. I know it wasn't my fault, but I still feel terrible. When my friend had a seizure while driving and crashed the car we were in, he wasn't wearing his seatbelt and kinda went forward into the windshield before landing in my lap. As I was stuck underneath him for about 36 minutes, I had nothing but time to, look at his pretty gnarly injuries. His hand had gone into the windshield pretty good, but I'm why we can't have nice things. and I've seen tendons and degloving injuries before. What I had never even considered a possibility, though, was your talus bone shooting straight out the side of your effing ankle and through your shoe, which is what Homeboy had going on. I'm glad he was still out of it from the seizure in a way, because there is absolutely nothing I could have done to tell him that was going to be alright. Spoiler alert, it wasn't okay, and now we're both amputees. The Mazda Protege was not designed to hit a brick yoga studio at full force. The jaws of life are pretty cool though. When my mentally ill girlfriend, now ex, killed our dog, I didn't see the act itself. I just heard him whimpering, and then I saw him bleeding from his nose. Took him to the vet. He had broken ribs and a collapsed lung, and we were basically broke, so we couldn't pay for the treatment, which included putting him on a ventilator that would have cost like $200 a day. Putting him to sleep was unfortunately our only option. When I asked her what happened, she said, "Well, he peed on our bed. That's what he gets." There has been quite a few, but one that comes to mind was a few weeks ago when I was working a night shift. My coworker asked me to help assist with a fallen patient, so I went there to do just that. Patient hadn't hit her head. She was laying on the bathroom floor. There was blood, however. It was coming from patient's leg, apparently. Her leg was broken, and it was in an abnormal position. End of her leg had broken clean off. Her skin was the only thing holding it together. It was mangled, laying on the floor. She asked, "How does it look?" And I replied, "Very bad." We had no idea how it happened. She was still conscious and not in huge pain. We had problems getting help from the ER or from ambulance. Apparently, they didn't think it was that big of a priority. When someone did show up, even the called doctor again to make sure what to do. We got patient together to ER. There are a few others, as I said, and this isn't probably even the worst, but it is the one I can think of right now. Watched my mother essentially what I can only describe as rot from the inside out due to X amount of different cancer treatments. Someone so strong, so full of life, become a few shades off an animated corpse is enough for me to question ever undergoing treatment should I ever fall ill with the same thing. If I am to be remembered by those that love me, I don't want to be remembered like that as the last thing they see. I don't blame the doctors at all, but treating cancer is so much of a gamble, I'm really not sure that it's worth it. In 1999, I went on a road trip through Spain by car. One night, we decided to sleep on one of those resting areas of highway. A family parked near us and decided to sleep there too. It was father, mother, a 5-year-old kid, and a 10-year-old girl. At least they looked like that. They played a bit and then entered the car to sleep. In the morning, they left, and when I heard them leaving, I woke up and decided to go too. They were less than 1 kilometer from us. When we got to the highway, we noticed a cloud of dust ahead. We saw cars stopping and people waving. The family car had flipped. The body of the little girl was hanging from the backseat window, without the head still bleeding. My girlfriend started screaming, and all I could do was put my head in my mouth, and it stayed there for kilometers. We both couldn't sleep with that thought. Never have and never will forget that sight. I do not know if anyone had survived that accident. 7th grade social studies would have been the year 2005. We had a substitute teacher. All of us were filing into the classroom to grab our seats. Everyone noticed the substitute looked like they were napping, and a few kids were cracking jokes and doing impressions of snoring. It became quickly apparent, as the substitute teacher's face started turning blue, that something was wrong, and 2 students ran to get the assistant principal while another dialed 911 in the class telephone. No smartphones yet. We were rushed out of the classroom and set up with optional counseling and the rest of the week off afterwards. He had died of some kind of choking or cardiac arrest. I cannot remember which. In fact, I've tried to get this out of my head for years, because I'll never know if I saw them die or if they were dying in front of me while I did nothing. While the image of them with their head down on the teacher's desk slowly turning blue is etched into my mind, it's really the sounds of the mocking students that haunt the memory of it all. Sometime in my high school years in a West Texas town, a neighborhood pal wrecked his four-wheeler, no helmet on, hit a large metal barred fence head first. Running up to the incident was rough. The driver was on the ground flat on his back convulsing, and the passenger who rode on the back was 10 to 15 feet away, rolling on the ground with one of his legs not moving. The driver's face was turning blue. Blood seeped out of his mouth and he had bones sticking out of his wrists. We tried CPR on the driver and to calm the passenger down, but with your knee and below not being attached to the rest of your body, it was almost impossible. I'll tell you what, the worst part was after 10 minutes of us high school teens trying, the dad of the driver showed up. We weren't even a mile from his house. He tried to revive his son, but after some time he stood up crying out to the crowd, "Somebody help me. Somebody save my only son." Core memory locked in at that moment. New Year's Eve about 20 years ago, me and a group of friends were at our local pool hall, and one of our friends and his girlfriend got into an argument, and she stormed out and started walking to her apartment, which was about a half a mile away. We didn't think much of it. We just kept playing pool. So right before midnight, decided to head to my place, and when we walked outside, that's when we saw emergency vehicles flying past us. So we walked out to the edge of the parking lot, and we can see a couple of cars down the street where the ambulances started to pull up. So we started walking towards it, and when we got there, we could see my friend's girlfriend mangled and dead on the side of the road. And then a little further up, my friend and another man were laying on the road. The other man was clearly dead, but my friend was still alive and trying to get up, and the paramedics were trying to get him to stay down. But he was a very big guy, so they were having trouble keeping him down. After Life Flight came and got him, we all started heading toward the hospital, but he died on his way there. Apparently, when she stormed out of the bar and started walking home, he started following her when she was hit by a car and instantly killed. The man stopped and got out of his car, and while him and my friend were trying to tend to her when they were both hit by a drunk driver. The man that hit her was killed instantly, but my friend was still alive. I remember him trying to get up screaming her name, so we thought that he was going to survive, but apparently he was in shock and died on the way to the hospital. That was one of the worst nights of my life. That shit still haunts me to this day. When I was about 9 or 10, our neighbor was backing into his garage with cement walls with his arm hanging out the window. Oof. He accidentally got too close to the wall and smashed his arm. He proceeded to panic and jet forward and backwards repeatedly and ineffectively, severing his arm almost completely. His arm was hanging off of the bare remaining tendons, I think. Looked like a stringy thing. My family was outside enjoying a nice sunny day playing catch. We were all shocked and jaws all dropped. It took literal several minutes before my dad could move his legs to run and go call for an ambulance. I'm not afraid of anybody sticking their arms or feet out of my windows. Deaths in combat are the absolute worst. Ever see a person get most of their face shot off by a shotgun, look at you and all around you in utter confusion with their one remaining eye as the inevitability of their own death is slowly dawning upon them and their esophagus opens and closes, trying to gasp for air? It's the sound that is worst of all. My mom had been sick for years, survived cancer twice, but that takes a toll on you. We had her home in her bed. She had stopped swallowing well, and the hospice nurse said it would be soon. I was in the kitchen with my family, and I don't remember the conversation, but I know it was pissing off my dad. I said, "Hey Dad, let's go back and see Mom," to get him away from it for a bit. I wheel him down the hallway to their bedroom. As we come through the door, the nurses are sitting there, and you can hear Mom breathing hard. I loudly say, "Hey Mom, we came to see you." The nurse gets up and says it's 2, and puts her hands on Mom's shoulder. As we get closer to the bed, I suddenly realize it's quiet. The nurse puts up her hand in a stop motion to us, and I see her check Mom's pulse. She stands up and looks at the other nurse, who says, "Oh." I ask if she just passed, and the nurse slowly nods and says yes. I'm kind of in shock, but then I hear Dad make the saddest noise I've ever heard. I look at his face, and I see everything on it at once. Sad, loss, pain, happy. So probably not the worst thing on here, but the look on my dad's face when I accidentally brought him back to see my mom at the exact moment she died is so far the worst thing I have personally seen so far. Thank you for sharing that deeply personal moment and memory. I'm sure, obviously, it's terrible and will stay with you forever, but in time, it may prove to be a good thing. I don't know. Driving down the highway, I'm a bit behind a truck carrying very large tires, like for massive tractors or something, some kind of machinery. The tires are covered in a tarp. I see something small fall off of the back of the trailer, and it bounces up past my window. And I see it's one of those rubber tie-down tarp straps, like, seriously, just one. The truck goes around the curve in the road ahead of me, and one of those massive tires slips right off of the side. A van is driving next to them, and it slams into the van and just crumples the thing. Tire bounces back into my lane. I swerve wildly to avoid being killed. It was awful. Just an absolute mind F of a moment that all seemed to happen in slow motion. During my first deployment in Afghanistan, a group of guys from my unit were going on a patrol when an IED went off. It warped the frame and caused the guys inside to be trapped, and they burned to death. My buddy, though, tried to get them out and burned his hands and really destroyed him mentally. He started drinking, and he had been issued the hydrocodone for his burn. He went from being a fantastic soldier, father, and husband to being a homeless heroin addict. His wife left with the kids within a year of him getting back. He had difficulty keeping up with the requirements our commander gave him, and he ended up getting a dishonorable discharge and OD'd not long after.